Well, welcome. Hopefully, we're live now, and we had a couple technical difficulties, but it should be going now. I'm going to check a little bit here, make sure we get a little bit of update on the screen, and yes, we do. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And let me pause that there. So, I have today with me a medical doctor, Bryan Peck. We're going to talk about vaccines. And let me pull this up here. We've got Bryan there in the corner there with no face. How you doing, Bryan? All right. Oh yeah. So before we go on, let me make sure people can hear. Can anybody confirm if you can hear? Let's see. Because that's always a challenge with OBS. Can't hear them, they say. All right, that makes sense. So, I think, how to do that. All right. Globo's the clown. So, all right, Bryan, say something again. We'll see. So, all right, talk a little bit more. Oh, nope. I can now I can see that it's not coming through at least. So, that helps. Oh, it's probably something here in speakers. There. Squeak that chair again.
All right, and back to the chair. You got it?
There. Now I can see you talking.
There we go. That's part of it. Now can they hear me?
So Globo's the clown hears voices in his head, so that doesn't count. We need a little more confirmation. All right, we got him. So, Surf, Sryph. How you doing? So we have a few things. Some housekeeping. I've been real busy this last week. Kids had some sports things, so I didn't get anything out. But I had a really nice video I found by David Emery that I'm gonna highlight. But if you haven't seen David Emery, you look him up. He has some really good information, and the video he did is a pretty cool collection of data and analysis. So I'll be looking for that. And then I still have my gravity challenge I'm working on. Very technical. I changed how I'm going to calculate things a little more precisely, a little more accurately. I'm getting better than, I'm getting pretty good accuracy on predicting gravity based on latitude, longitude, and elevation. So, and then chat. How do you guys? How does the chat look on the screen there? I had somebody mention that it was hard to read. So let me know if you think if there's anything that doesn't look good there. So we'll do this. If you guys have questions on this, send them to the chat, or even better, if you send them to me in Discord. Just DM them to me, and if you don't have Discord, if you're not on my Discord server, I will post it in the chat right now. So, boom, boom, copy. There it is. All right, so Bryan, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, whatever you like, and then we can get into this article we found.
All right, good deal. What I'm going to go by is Bryan Peck. Oh, and what happened? I'm looking at the wrong thing. Which means I have graduated medical school, and I'm what some would refer to as a fledgling doctor, and I'm one momentarily. I'm a medical resident. I actually do have research background in vaccines, in addition to other communicable diseases, including viruses and contagious bacteria.
Contagious bacteria, no fun.
Not at all.
Yeah. So you do have some experience with vaccines, so I think it's a pretty good topic here. So I found this article here by Dr. Mercola, a guy I somewhat respect and have been reading his stuff for quite a while, though I think it's maybe not. I think he may have gone a little bit off the reservation sometimes here. So this article here is, well, I'll post the link in chat as well if people want to look at it. So, what are you thinking about this article here?
I'm thinking that when it comes to being an article that's easy to consume, it's absolutely that. When it comes to how factual it is, it's really not terribly factual. It suffers from a lot of what you see in terms of the anti-vax community, what you see from let's say, the flat Earth community, which is quote mining and misinterpretation of data.
Yeah, and for me reading it, I don't know. As a non-professional in that field, I don't know what's what, and I suppose that's pretty common. So are there specific things you want to highlight on what you thought was maybe a little bit off?
Well, before we actually get into that, I mean, this actually goes to something you just said. You don't know, not knowing is okay. And part of the reason why this works and why articles like this are so convincing in some ways actually speaks to a flaw in our medical system that I would acknowledge, actually, which is healthcare tends to seem paternalistic versus an integrative system to where the patient and doctor work towards a goal together. And that's largely where a lot of stories like this will come up, and how people will be drawn into it because it's easily accessible and people will talk with you about it versus a doctor telling you what to do.
Yeah, I've seen where doctors they want you to do something. That's it. They don't care. They don't care about your opinion, and what do you think about people that come in that have been reading online on WebMD?
Hang on one second. Somebody is. I have a visitor, and they're calling me from the other room. Hang on.
Oh, all right. Well, here you go. Tell you, I water is better out of the creaky blinder mug. I'm sure y'all know creaky blinder. So, any questions you guys have that you in anticipation of what he will be covering, or things you're wondering about for vaccines?
Sorry about that. My dad's trying to figure out how to use my smoker, and he can't figure out how to get it going.
Oh, did you get him going?
Yeah, he didn't realize that the temperature probe is tied to my phone and not the actual device.
Nice. So
he kept trying to read the magnet as opposed to understanding that it didn't have a display on it.
Oh yeah. So, well, all right. We got Globo's the Clown here. Says super chat for $19.99. Says you get it. All right. Good. I don't know what we get, but thank you. So, all right. Let's see what we were talking about. More of a holistic approach to medicine and health.
Yeah. Holistic approach is the best way. Holistic, I'm not sure if you call it that, but just not telling a patient they know nothing, because anymore we do have a psychosocial portion of it. We have an interaction portion to where if you don't feel safe talking to us about something, you're not likely to give us the information we need to help you. And if you're not willing to help yourself, we can't help you either. We can only go off of what we know, and we're very good at jumping to conclusions. But if you want to jump into the article,
Yeah,
I don't even know where to go with except for starting top down.
yeah,
And
it is. It's a good size article, so I don't think we may get through all of it.
yeah,
Um,
personally, I was actually going through the sources just trying to see what this person was on about the entire time,
mhm.
and several of them don't even really seem to make sense. He's missing several sources, like when is it like where there would be a 14? There's no reference to it in the sources. Almost like it was later pulled, but they didn't actually get the hyperlink out. I'm just not sure what they've done.
Oh, I'm looking for where that is. So there are a lot of sources. Yeah, I see 8, 9, 10 here.
Then once you get to 13, suddenly you go when you try to go to 14, you've got it down. You've got it down there below the misnumber. Is it the misnumbered source for the Cape Town measles epidemiology case series? But
Yep.
but it's not there. Instead, you go to 15.
Now I do see a 14 here at the very end of the this paragraph here in front of the ad.
Yes, but if you click the 14, well, not click the 14. If you go down to the source material at the bottom, you'll find 14 conspicuously absent from the from the sources.
Ah, okay.
Same thing with 12.
Yeah,
Now, I'm
it
not sure. Go ahead.
is. I
Sorry
don't know
about
if
that.
it's. I like to not assume the worst and say then maybe it's an error. But oh yeah, okay. At the very bottom here, I see 12 is missing, 14 is missing.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, weird.
yeah, and even 13, only the abstract is in English. So unless Dr. Mercola speaks Dutch, I'm worried about I'm worried about the veracity of that particular edition as well.
Yeah, there it is in Cape Town.
Yeah. But but that's just the base. That's the very start of what I would say about this. But when it comes down to it, you can even go back to 3, 4, and 5 up near the top for those sources where he's explaining how it wears off in 10 years. Vaccines don't wear off in 10 years. What you actually have when it comes to vaccines and the way they induce immunity is you get what's called waning. And that's where you begin to lose a little bit of the immunity over time. And not all people will lose it. Matter of fact, it's something like 95% of people will still retain it, as it will still retain it after 15 years, according to one of the articles. On an additional article, it shows that loss of immunity is similar both in the people who are vaccinated versus the people who acquire it naturally. The only major
Oh,
difference because yeah,
so it more models how you would get it naturally, right? That
correct.
it wears off the same naturally or through yeah. So then it's more about getting boosters.
Yes, exactly. And that's not something that we would have really come up to or thought about up until recently because for the longest time, because of how successful it was, and there wasn't the reintroduction of measles outbreaks, it didn't really become a thought. It's only now in the age where we no longer where we have these groups that can sorry having
Nope.
difficulties when we have these groups that can intermingle that may or may not have before. That lack of isolation is really one of the major reasons why we see spikes now. Because a group that's not vaccinated that they wind up getting it meets a group that has had waning strip a little bit off, they'll get what we call a modified measles or a modified mumps or a modified rubella. Well, actually, not typically with rubella. Rubella, the MMR is something like 100% coverage forever. Like it's negligible. You have to
Wow.
have some sort of acquired immunodeficiency in order for rubella to fall off after you've been vaccinated for it.
So and that happens like for measles. That happens because people are traveling more, or that people are moving into an area, immigration and things like that.
That's largely where you'll see a lot of it come from. You do get endemic pockets, or you'll have sometimes a primary failure, or you'll get a baby that acquires it before their vaccinations. That's not breast. Usually, it's a baby that's breastfed, Oh, not breastfed. I mean, one that's formula fed. That'll wind up
Okay.
with it most time.
So when is the typical MMR
MMR,
vaccination?
it'll depend on your country. We in America, I believe we do 8 months as the first because that's around the time that you start to get away from the maternal antibodies, and then you receive a second dose anywhere between 18 to 24 months.
Okay. So MMR, and then there's they do rotavirus pretty early on, right? Is that immediate?
Actually, I'd have to go look. It's been a while since I've been with pediatrics, and checking the
Okay.
schedule is not something that I
Yeah,
have
you
memorized.
don't have it offhand.
Oh, I can pull it up real easy.
Sure, sure.
Speaking
Okay.
of vaccine schedule, actually, that actually brings me to one of my all-time favorite things that anti-vaxxers use, which is they say you receive something like 100 vaccines by the time you're two. The actual number
Yeah.
is something like 30 if you get the optional ones.
So they're being a little sensational in their quantity.
Very much so. And
So
at one point, it may have been higher, but the current schedule is not bad. Let's see, 15 a year, and you don't get very many of them at the same time. Like that's not hard on anybody, honestly.
Thomas Miller here is saying 2, 4, and 6 months for
I believe
Rotarix. Yeah.
I
He
believe him.
also he also says our immune system doesn't forget, rather it gets lazy. So
And that's honestly a good way to put it. One way to think of that maybe is it that may is it, that's a good way to think about it. Actually, I won't argue with that.
yeah, that sounds like what I understand of it. And now a new one, relatively new, my kids got was chickenpox.
Yeah, I'm actually too old to have received VZV.
Yeah. Now my one kid got it, got the immunization, and then he got chickenpox still. But I can tell you for sure, it was not like I got it. It was
Yeah.
very mild.
Well, that's actually not terribly uncommon.
Yeah, so I would take that as a win, because he wasn't dying. He didn't have scabs everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't know if that would be a primary or secondary failure, seeing as how it was milder. I would assume it's a secondary failure to where he mounted an antibody response to the vaccine. It just didn't reach a level that we consider immune. You can get to
Hmm.
a point. You can get to a point to where your body recognizes your body does recognize it, but it's unable to give it pure immunity. And instead, you gain a resistant or a modified version of the virus that you get from it. Which is in the case of this article, where you get a lot of the case studies where they're showing people who are vaccinated getting the disease, they're getting a modified variant.
So
Even one of the cases in this article, they actually talk about two doctors who are, I think, actually in the Midwest that just couldn't believe that they could have possibly gotten measles from a patient,
yeah,
and actually got measles, continued to work, and did not spread measles at any point in time.
because of the modified version of it, or because theirs was milder.
Because theirs was so mild, it never reached a point to where it never reached a point or a concentration to where their respiratory droplets were infectious.
Huh. That is interesting. Yeah, that sounds like similar to what my kid had. All right. So, anything else in this article here?
Oh God, if where to begin, where to
He's
start?
talking. Yeah, he's talking about herd immunity
Mhm.
and claiming that it doesn't work for measles.
It
And
does work for
then
measles. It's just a
yeah.
matter of the percentage that you have to maintain for measles is incredibly high compared to a lot of them. Like
Okay.
mumps, yeah, mumps requires a much lower threshold, and thank God for that because mumps is actually one of the disorders that your immune system gets really lazy on. Me personally, I have to get a booster every 6 years because my immune system says, "Oh, mumps are no big deal to us."
Okay. And you test for that?
Oh yeah, for doctors, I believe I have to go every 18 months to get my titers for certain disorders, for certain diseases. My bad.
Okay, so you're getting vaccines regularly because of your profession.
Correct.
Okay.
But a
So
lot of people, that's not going to be an issue with because once they're past childhood, they'll never see a case of it again
yeah, yep,
until they have children.
that's true. So
Yeah.
okay. Um so different diseases have different um herd immunity levels that are necessary. So I suppose rotavirus must be pretty easy, pretty low threshold.
Actually, I don't know that off the top of my head. I would assume
Okay.
so. The only problem with rotavirus is that it's easily contagious. So if
Yeah.
you,
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant rubella.
oh,
Not
rubella.
rotavirus. Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts with an R, so I mixed them up.
No, it's no issue. You'd be surprised how many people get rubella and roseola backwards,
Uh,
even on the step one, which is our licensing exam. And by that I mean there was actually a mistake on. I can't remember how many years ago it was, but there was actually a mistake written on the medical licensing exam to where they mistyped rubella in place of roseola.
nice.
Yeah.
All right. Measles was targeted for elimination in the United States in 1979, persisted at low until 89, when an
Mhm.
epidemic swept the country. Cases occurred among appropriately vaccinated school-age population and among immunized inner-city preschool children.
The thing is, I can't even check that source because it's
Oh
gone
yeah,
and he doesn't list
that's
it.
that's source 12 with no link to it. It is a
Yeah.
quote though.
And I guess I could go find it that way. It would take a little bit, but this is probably one of those things to where it was introduced by an unvaccinated child and a secondary immune and there was a secondary failure of the vaccine, so people wound up with it. It's
Well,
hard to know without reading it.
Google Foo turned it up by pasting that quote in. Measles control in the United States, problems of the past and challenges for the future. If you see it on the
Oh, there
screen
it
there.
is. I've actually got the article pulled. Oh, this is a review. All right. Hmm.
Oh, there we go.
What have we got? Yeah, I'll go back through this and so I'll make a post. I'll make a post in the comments thereafter because this is actually quite. Is it quite a? Well, it's not lengthy, but it's quite dense.
Yes, it does look
Yeah, because this is a
many
review.
words.
For those who are not familiar with this, a review article when it comes to medicine is very similar to a meta synthesis. You're going to take a bunch of you're going to take a bunch of articles that have similar tracking, and you're going to create one narrative out of a bunch of different primary sources. So a proper reading of a literature review will get you in one direction, but to make sure that you got everything about it, you'll have to do source criticism of the review itself.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of references in this one here.
Something like 90 or so.
92. Yep.
That's a that's pretty stout.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you they were. Is it? Yeah. And going through this, this is about adjusting this. This review is primarily about adjusting the schedule and developing a new vaccine because it's getting to the point to where because we have these pockets and is it these pockets of the unvaccinated and we have these spurts with the herd immunity necessary to keep measles going with our current vaccine. It's just one of these pushes that you see to update both the literature, the process, and the technology.
All
Which
right.
actually, in the article, you run into he actually lists where is it? Um, I've got a list of things that I've that I've already gone through,
Okay.
and yeah, source number 20. that he has in his list is actually a letter that was written specifically addressing the idea that gaining herd immunity in the light of the way measles is spread and the way that people we have mobility of people and we have new ideas and cultural differences, you won't be able to eliminate measles in our current format, which is probably accurate. We are going to have to adjust. We're going to have to make the schedules, and we're going to have to make the schedule different. We may need a different vaccine, and I said, there's just nothing. I said, there's just it's a nothing burger to add this into this article, except to steal a line or two from it. It's very
Hmm.
good. It's very good material for quote mining.
Yeah, let's see. It says 777,000 people a year worldwide. So this was in 2000. Died from measles. That's a large number. 750,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then down to 160,000 in 2010.
Correct.
Wow,
Which
wow,
shows that there is a positive effect of the MMR vaccine being spread. It's just not going to get to pure elimination.
sure, wow. That's a big change. Um, wow. So okay,
And it actually works against the narrative of this article, which is one
it
of the major reasons when it comes to these. I always tell people if they cite sources, read them, and then read the context that the quote was pulled from.
yeah. You see that in other things like flat Earth stuff. They'll put something in and like, are you gonna go with that? You sure you don't want to pull that before you before I start reading it? Um,
I'm
so
all too familiar with that. I did watch Red's Rhetoric versus Southern Israelite, where Southern Israelite attempted to make Isaac Newton a flat earther.
oh yeah, or Tesla. They like to do that too.
Yeah. Oh, we have Mind of God in chat. I didn't know he would be here for this.
Yeah. So all right. Um, any other things from here worth looking at?
I mean, he does have a couple things that are somewhat correct in here that I guess we could look at real fast.
Okay.
And that's that a natural immunity versus a vaccine induced immunity does have a singular benefit. And that singular benefit is that it gets the plasma cells ready to go. So you're actually much less likely to get it again through a natural induced immunity versus a vaccine. That's very true. The
Hmm.
only problem is that the complications of having measles are so much more common than than injuries from vaccines, and
Yeah.
the incidence of measles being so low really helps defeat even the people who have secondary failure later in life not getting it. So it's just one of those things to where you can say, oh well, a natural immunity is better. It's like, yeah, but the chances of you never getting it to begin with and just have the percentages work out to where what we're doing is still better.
Yeah. Never get it versus yeah. And and when you measure risk of and it's heartless. It's done by the numbers, but the number of people that die versus in either case. So I did look up. I tried to find based on some of the information that is apparently out there that I've seen on anti-vax is how many people have died from it, and I couldn't find anything. I didn't spend much time, but I didn't find any numbers on people that died from immunizations.
It's relatively low, and numbers are hard to find, mostly because people just associate the idea that somebody died and they recently received one as the cause versus looking at other confounding factors or compounding factors. Comorbidity is preconditions or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
And preconditions and comorbidities are one of the major reasons why we have vaccines for things like the flu. It's not that the flu is necessarily lethal. It's that if you have an underlying disorder and you're older, you have this. Like say somebody's a 70-year-old type 2 diabetic, which is common, especially in America.
Yeah.
Somebody who gains the flu at that point, one of the major things you get with an infection like that is their blood sugar spikes way, way up to the point to where they may need an insulin control even though they're type 2. Add that to the fact that they'll dehydrate. Add that to the fact that their mobility is lowered. Add that to the fact that an uncontrolled fever can make their decision-making poor. You've just complicated this person's ability to live, because a lot of what they're going to do is going to be based off of how they take their medications. Is there anything? Are they going to suffer a heart attack that they'll seek help for? That's where the majority of the deaths are when people think about things like that.
Yeah. Interesting. So, all right. Delayed infection multiplies risk.
Delayed infection multiplying risk, that's just one of those things to where if you get it at a later in life, typically with a childhood illness, it is more severe.
Yeah, like they say about chickenpox.
Yeah, chickenpox late in life, that's one thing. Rubella can be really bad. Mumps is the one that you really worry about. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh. Like, mumps is a really bad one, especially if you're a male. If you get that in your adult life, having never had it before, you can get orchitis, swelling of your testicles, so great that it actually damages your ability to produce sperm, making you infertile.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that.
That's part of the reason why I get vaccinated.
Yes. So, okay. So yeah, so there's a lot on MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella, and then there's we touched on rotavirus, and there's this DTaP. So is that diphtheria? I don't remember them.
Diphtheria, toxoid, and pertussis.
This is saying tetanus.
Tetanus. What did I say?
I don't know. Something toxoid.
Oh, well, there is a toxoid in the vaccine.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah.
And this is part of the article I didn't get to today. When it came, I spent about 2 hours in a Sprint store trying to figure something out earlier today because I was being billed for something I shouldn't have been.
Okay.
So that's actually about to the point to where I ran into a wall.
Okay.
When it came to time.
Now, if I can say I've read quite a few things from Dr. Mercola here, and I don't want to paint him as in a bad way. I think there's a lot of good stuff that he has. I don't think this is maybe some of his best stuff. But there is, and I'm just going to go off of memory, talk about the chickenpox vaccine and the relationship to kids getting chickenpox and having it just in their system and whatever, and then the older generation interacting with the kids, and how that would boost the older generation's immunity and help them to be better able to fight shingles. So I don't know if you can address that.
I actually don't know where that would be going to, because when it comes to getting chickenpox as a kid versus gaining shingles as an adult, one of the major, I guess being exposed to a different strain could be beneficial in terms of seeing kids, because one of the things that you can do to help delay getting shingles is actually to get a VZV vaccine as an adult.
A VZV?
Yeah.
What's that?
Varicella zoster virus. That's the technical name for chickenpox.
Okay. So you get a chickenpox vaccine as an adult, and it helps you to be more immune to shingles.
It can.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
still
Now
work
there
being
is.
done. There's still work being done on that. VZV is
Yeah,
a
it's a new
very,
one.
very new vaccine.
And I've seen that there's talk of a shingles vaccine. Is that the one, or is that a different one too?
I'd actually have to check that because that's
Okay.
work that I
Okay.
haven't been involved in yet.
Okay. All right. So, all right, a little bit on that. Somebody, Stringer News was asking about what about the chickenpox and shingles link.
Actually, they're the exact same virus. When you get the
Yeah.
chickenpox, a portion of it actually becomes latent and travels up your nerve endings, and it can actually get into the ganglion body. Is it the ganglion for that nerve in the dermatome? So when you visit, so shingles is actually just a reactivation of chickenpox, and then it spreads down that dermatome. So
So,
you
all
get
right.
it in
So,
the air
can we get
in the
some
area of the
terms
skin.
first?
Oh,
What
I'm sorry.
ganglion and dermatome?
A
What are
ganglion is
those?
the a ganglion. Well, ganglion is probably not the right word. The area where the cell body is on the nerve, is it on the nerve that runs from your spinal cord to your skin.
Okay. So, is that close to your spinal cord?
Yes.
Okay. So,
And
it
hey,
kind of travels and lives near your spinal cord.
yeah, it's actually living in a branch of. It's actually living in the cell body that branches off of your spinal cord
Oh,
that goes to your skin. Yeah.
that's like alien eggs. Hmm.
Yeah, and then when it reactivates, it actually travels down. It actually travels down that nerve, and it causes flare-ups in your skin over the area that that nerve innervates. That area is called the dermatome.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, and I know shingles often affects the trunk. They say right, the torso, not extremities so much.
And that's very much so the same with yeah, it's also very much so the same with chickenpox itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's how we distinguish it it's how we distinguish it initially from measles before we go to other things. Once you have the body,
Oh,
if you present first with the body rash, would be limbs versus trunk, and then we can go from there if if the first major presentation is rash.
interesting. Okay. So, all right. So, there's the annual flu shot that a lot of people get. How does that work in with the kind of scheduled immunizations? Are they the same? A lot of the same science? Is it?
Well, it depends on. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just kind of leaving it open. So if you have anything to put in there.
But most vaccines are radically different than each other. Like you'll have whole cell viruses that is it where they've been weakened. You can have you can have whole cell dead viruses. You can have not viruses, vaccines. You can have you can have toxoids, which is a degenerate immune cell. It just depends on what you have. It just depends on what you're trying to do and how dangerous it could potentially be. So you make sure that you use the components that generate an immune response versus the components that are going to cause disease.
Okay.
Um, the, the flu, most of the flu, I think we actually do use live attenuated flu most times. I'll have to double check that. But what we do each time is we're checking. What they do for the flu shot each year is they're projecting what they think the strain of flu is that's going to be the prevalent strain that year, and they create a vaccine against that particular strain. Now, some years they get it spot on, and we have and we have really really low flu, and then some years they're dead wrong, like a couple of years ago, where they actually had to, in the middle of flu season, issue a different vaccine because not only was the strain that made it out not the one not affected by the vaccine, but it was actually relatively dangerous.
Was that the H1N1?
Oh no, this is actually just
Oh,
the
different.
typical flu a couple of years ago.
Okay.
H1N1 was something entirely different,
That's a special one.
and it was that was actually a flu that managed to cross the barrier between animal and human, which is unusual.
Yeah. Okay. That's what it. Yeah. Or the 1918 swine flu.
Was that Spanish
Similar.
influenza? Was it a swine flu?
Yeah, I think that's the name is swine flu. The common
Oh,
parlance name.
learn something new every day. I didn't realize the 1918 flu was was a swine flu.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what people are worried about when it comes to those, the ones that bridge animals, because we're not used to seeing that. What's it that um, capsid shell? So it can get in, and your body doesn't know how to clear it.
Okay. That's why it can be more deadly,
Correct.
I suppose.
Because
Okay.
if it can't be shut down, your body can't, or if your body can't arrest the reproduction cycle, it'll just go on and on and on until you don't have until your other faculties can no longer keep up.
So now, does the influenza, the shot, they give you a couple different strains in that same, the same shot, right? So are they the same every year, or are they all different every year?
Usually they're different, and a lot
Okay.
of the times they're built off the idea of shift as opposed to drift. Shift and drift, I should say, because they're one of the few things that they can put together pieces of themselves from each other and create something new by sharing capsid shells. And I'm not sure the exact mechanism of how that occurs, but it does happen.
So what are these shells you're talking about?
The capsid, it's the protein coating. It's the protein coating of a virus. Typically, when a virus gains entry typically the shell is how it gains access because it has a configuration that can get onto a cell receptor, and that's how it is. And that's how it'll either be absorbed whole into your cell, or will inject in once it's been accepted its nuclear material, and then hijack your cell processes.
Okay.
Viruses are weird creatures like that.
Yeah, they're all very different, and the biology of them is quite something. So, all right. So let's see. We had a question from the Mind of God about the publications on the importance of rest, relaxation, and meditation. So I'm figuring that he's meaning that as an alternative to getting immunized.
Well, it's a terrible alternative to getting immunized, but when it comes to keeping your stress level low enough to where you're not susceptible to infection, that has some merit.
Yeah.
People in high stress tend to have depressed immune faculties.
Okay. Is there research on that topic that you're aware
There
of?
actually is. There is.
Yeah.
They've actually got decent articles about it on PubMed as well. Mind you, they say most of them don't have a lot of statistical power. So you've got so it's not. We can't say it's causal yet, but we can say that it has some link.
Okay. So you wouldn't recommend it for measles?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I think the only thing you're going to want to do with measles is sleep and itch.
Is which is the one where you got to be in a dark room? Is it the mumps?
I'm not familiar with it.
Don't
I'd
know.
recommend
Okay.
a dark room for all of them, honestly.
To get enough
You don't
sleep.
want to look
Yeah.
you don't want to look at your skin and be like, "Oh man, there's red
Oh.
spots on it."
So okay. All right. So then there's obviously a lot of concerns, and the biggest one that you hear most often is vaccines cause autism. So do you want to go after that a little bit and explain your thoughts on it?
I think it was, if not for the fact that murder is wrong, Andrew Wakefield very likely would have earned a sentence of being put in front of a firing squad for his medical research and the fact that he has actually caused so much injury and pain because of what he's done.
Yeah.
There is no link. Like there have been so many studies trying to do what he did that haven't even come up close, and even the participants of his own study have come out and said that what he wrote about them in the paper is just completely false. Not to
So
mention that
the
his paper also didn't cover a very large amount of people to begin with, so its statistical power was really, really low.
Yeah, so he had the people. You mean the patients that were in the study have come out
The
later
parents
and
of the
said they didn't like
patients.
it. The parents of the patients. Okay.
The majority of the patients that he used for the study were profoundly autistic.
Oh, okay. So it'd probably be good to cover what is the kind of the claim about it that I you probably know pretty well, better than I
It
do.
depends on it wholly depends on which claim you want to go with. A lot of people were stuck on the idea that the mercury in it causes autism, when the mercury that's always been used in it is the formulation that is almost immediately eliminated into the body. The kidney, as a matter of fact, it doesn't even get reabsorbed. It is a filter. It is a filter only formation of filter only formation. Once your kidneys see it, they yank it out, and away it goes. If it makes it past the kidney more than once, that's impressive.
And that's methyl mercury. Is that right?
Um, I actually do not
Dimethyl.
remember which. I think it might be dimethyl. Off the top of my head and on the
Dimethyl.
spot,
Okay.
I cannot remember which one it is.
For some reason that came up in my head. So um, there's dimethyl is an organomercury compound.
Yeah, which literally just
Might,
means that it's that's just mercury with a
yeah.
with a carbon attached to it, hydrocarbon attached to it.
So I don't know the mercury in vaccines. Yeah, and I had looked at that. Not very many vaccines actually have it.
Yeah, pretty much only the flu vaccine anymore has it, and even
Yeah.
when we
Oh,
had it in there, we had the formulation that passed straight through.
yeah. Okay. Thiomersal is the
Yeah,
correct one.
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Preservative and vaccines. Well, um,
You want to hear the fun part about that though? We actually
yes.
have it available in the flu shot without that. They're non-mercury flu
Yeah.
vaccines. So if you want, you can get all your vaccines free of mercury entirely.
All right. So then, how does it still cause autism? I
They went
guess.
immediately to there's an aluminum adjuvant, which is something that increases the immune response when you're using an adjuvant.
Uh huh.
So they decided. So once they could no longer say thimerosal, the immediate thought was it's got to be heavy metals being stuck in the brain. So we're going to go that it's aluminum, which
Okay.
makes next to no sense because the aluminum concentrations that would have to get stuck in the brain cannot be replicated in the vaccines that you have unless you multiply the number of vaccines you have significantly, which is part of where the idea, I think, and this is just speculation at this point, where they say you get hundreds of vaccines versus the 27 to 30, depending.
Yeah. And does aluminum even cross the blood-brain barrier?
It can,
Depending
but
on
not typically.
okay. So you'd need a little more.
It would need something to tag
Yeah.
along with because aluminum, as it is, so ions don't like to cross the blood-brain barrier like that. And usually if they're going to cross, they need something to take it with them.
Yeah. So the study that Wakefield did had a small number of participants,
Mhm.
and he drew some conclusions about the vaccines causing the autism,
Just a
and
specific vaccine, actually,
just one.
just one. One that he was in the process and on the board and committee for creating a opposing vaccine for.
Okay, so a little conflict of interest there.
Very much so.
So, my mind of. Are you familiar with the mind of God?
I'm very familiar with the mind of
Yeah.
God.
He,
He told me that sinners don't deserve to talk to him one time because he claimed the inerrancy of the Bible, and I told him that there has to be some inerrancy because according to the Bible, pi equals 3.
It does. It
And mind
does.
you, I'm not even an atheist. I actually do believe,
Yeah.
but you have to assume some inerrancy when things are recorded by men.
Yep. And that, it's not a science book, clearly, or they wouldn't have gotten the ratio, the 5-30 ratio off there. So so people know it's talking about a bowl that was 5 units in diameter, or sorry, in radius, and then 30 units around the perimeter, which with rounding isn't even right because it'd have to be 31 if you're going to round. But if it's not a science book, then that's fine. Fine with me. It's not telling us how to replicate that exact measurement.
No.
So somebody's asking, did the Mind of God, did you get your RFID chip in the mail? I'm assuming mail. So I know Mind of God wants to get wants to get chipped.
Is it that he wants to get chipped, or is it that he wants the chips to exist so that he can continue believing as he does?
Something like that, yeah.
All right.
I think. He said he put a timeline on it, so
yeah,
5 years, I think. So we'll see. I've seen talk of all right. Well, before we move on from Wakefield, was he had a small sampling. He had a specific one vaccine. There was a conflict of interest. The kids that had it were extremely autistic, and which doesn't match the millions of people that have been immunized. And they're plenty of people are not autistic.
Correct. Not to mention, he was piggybacking off the fact that autism, in terms of how it was diagnosed, had recently been drastically expanded. It was when we were starting to develop more the idea of the spectrum. So it was easy prey as well.
Yeah, and when was his study? 70s?
Wasn't it 98?
98. Oh, okay.
He actually released a second study with another group of people in 2004, and I'd have to go look at that as well. But it apparently was barely even considered scientific. It was mostly a literature review with a conclusion.
And he's had his license or whatever revoked since that study. Yeah. Is that right?
License revoked. All credentials taken away. He was his name was stricken from the books at his university. Oof. And he's all of his papers have been retracted, and his name stricken from the legitimate papers that he was in, but that weren't fraudulent. And he's living off the generosity of people like Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, is she an anti-vaxxer?
I can't remember if it's Gwyneth Paltrow. There was a Hollywood darling that immediately latched onto it, and he's been living a life of luxury basically off of rich people who are trying to backing him up at this point, who believe in him.
I suppose you can get people with money to believe you, and then you can go off of that. Good for him, or not.
I think he probably lives a more comfortable life in disgrace than he ever did practicing.
Yeah. I saw a few videos of him. He did seem a little bitter.
He actually did of all things, there was a anti-vax documentary that I think he did a couple of years ago that got picked up on Netflix. Honestly, actually see if it's still up again. He was one of the producers for it and the writers.
Why would he be writing an anti-vax?
Oh, he is anti-vax.
Oh, I mean, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Let's see, vaxxed. From cover-up to catastrophe. Let me get this on here.
I first learned about this actually from I guess he's a YouTube personality in addition to a Facebook personality that I follow, ZDogMD. He's a primary care specialist from I think practices in Nevada, and he likes to break down things going on in the medical world and try to relate it to the patients and the people on Facebook, in addition to aspiring students. It's actually pretty good work. He does some skits such as Dr. Vader, where he puts on a Darth Vader outfit and describes the weird things that go on in a hospital, like patients who get sundowners.
Patients that get what?
Sundowners. It's something we call it whenever you have a patient who is elderly. That when the sun goes down, they're in a weird place. Their state of mind changes, and they do things that you wouldn't normally associate with them. They can be just kind, patient people during the day, but at night they'll pick you up by the throat and throw you across the room, yelling "corn lemon pickles" at you. And this will be a 90-year-old woman that suddenly developed the strength of about an 800-pound gorilla.
Oh, here we go. Somebody's saying Jenny McCarthy must be involved.
Jenny McCarthy, that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh, here it is. The number of preventable. It's hard to read. Is that hard to read? It is for me. Number of preventable illnesses, 152,000. Number of preventable deaths, 9,000. So she must be claiming these are number of autism diagnoses linked to vaccines. Oh, this isn't her.
This is a
this is
page.
against her. Nice. Okay. Interesting. Number of preventable diseases. Wow. So this is number of preventable deaths. So all right. So people that have maybe had an opportunity to get vaccinated, but didn't and then died.
Yeah. And this is looking like it's specifically America with the number that low.
Oh yeah.
Because in places where there is no ability to be vaccinated, measles isn't really all that deadly, but its complications can be life altering.
Okay.
Like this is the rarest sequelae I could think of, but I don't think there's been a recorded case where a person got it from a vaccine. Is what we call subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, which is where, yeah, it's a mouthful. And essentially what the name means is that they have just a background amount of inflammation in their brain for such a long time that it actually causes their neurons to harden over, and then they get an inflammation in their brain, and from the swelling they die.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's encephalitis is swelling of the brain, right?
This is swelling within the head, yes.
It's a kind of generic thing that can be caused by multiple. So, all right. Well, that wasn't Jenny McCarthy's site.
And how on earth did you get measles at 6 years old?
Who?
NANA.
Oh. Oh. Well, he's 173 years old, actually. Nobody knows that. I just made that up. But so here's Jenny McCarthy, an article on her. 50 confirmed cases of measles in Washington, another 5 in Texas, about 80 nationwide.
1984 Brazil. Yeah, that'll do it.
Oh. 1984 Brazil. How's your Portuguese there, NA? Or how's your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
By the way, if anyone hasn't actually done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I recently picked it up. I absolutely recommend it. That's probably the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah?
Yeah. Although if you're not in great shape, you'll be sore from about your neck to your knees.
I study martial arts. I've been doing it for 11 years, and on occasion we'll do some some grappling and joint locks like on the ground and stuff like that. Not too often. It's mostly standing. But yeah, that's pretty fun for sure.
What do you practice? It's got to be something interesting.
A Korean martial art. I'll leave it at that. So a lot of kicking, and that's the Korean martial arts like that. So,
I mean, Taekwondo, they have one kick that was specially designed to remove a man from a horse. I mean,
yes, I can tell you the Korean for that, and I'd pronounce it very poorly. Duyo Dui Poto Chuggy, potentially.
it's no issue. The year that I took Kung Fu, it was taught by a Korean man who translated everything to Korean.
Oh,
So we had all sorts of wild names for things.
yeah.
Jaban Sheik, sitting with legs crossed.
Nice. So, all right, let's see. Toxins. Are there toxins in since the thimerosal hasn't been in it for a while, which let's see. Hold on. Let me go back to this one here. This they're saying thimerosal was never used as a preservative in the MMR. And no vaccine license since '99 has contained it as a preservative, except a few multi-dose container vaccines, HIV and influenza. So there you go. Yet autism has not declined, so there is not a correlation. So if there's not a correlation, what does that point to?
Well, if there's not a correlation, it doesn't mean it's not causal for vaccines, but there's a very good chance that if you remove that and nothing changes, that it's not that it's not that. That is not related in any way, shape, or form. I'm double speaking now by accident.
Yeah. So if there's no correlation, then it suggests that it's not causal.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. So all right, let's go back to what was this?
As for toxins, actually there are some things you would consider toxic in some vaccines, but I said the amounts that they're in, they're not harmful.
Yes, like formaldehyde.
Correct.
Which is something that our body produces normally.
Yeah, it's we actually use it in a lot of wholesales, and we use it in attenuated bacterial vaccines. And the reason why we do that is because the bacteria in and of themselves, if they were allowed to just sit there producing within the actual vial, they could generate enough of their own toxins to be dangerous. So a low level of formaldehyde just deactivates their toxins and makes them safe for injection, while not being enough in volume to cause problems in the human body.
Yep. A friend of mine used to work for the health department, and they would test water for like water that ran by a garbage dump to verify that there weren't any oil, gas, and other volatiles in it. And in the same lab, they would test all sorts of things. And so there was a time where there was some concern, and they were testing breast milk. And he was surprised to find, until he looked it up, that there is formaldehyde in breast milk.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's quite literally just it's quite literally just a very simple compound. You'd be amazed what you could find. Is it? Oh, is that actually formaldehyde? There is it? Yeah, like look how simple that is.
Yeah.
Carbon, couple hydrogens, and your aldehyde group. Problem solved.
Yeah, and there's formaldehyde in fruit. People say that better not eat an apple because there's formaldehyde in it.
Oh, as long as you're not eating the seeds and getting that B17. My bad, that is it B17?
B16.
B17, I think, is actually
B17.
yeah, the one that Kent Hovind's all about, the bitter almond seed.
I didn't know about him, but vitamin, yeah, amygdalin,
Amygdalin, yeah.
yeah.
It's just dangerous stuff. I don't know why people are so convinced that it cures anything.
Oh, it's anti-cancer, they think.
Oh yeah, anything's anti-cancer in the appropriate doses. It's just being able to get it to where it needs to go. And
Yeah,
there's nothing in amygdalin that'll track to that'll track to it. It's like when people say that that cannabinoids are good for curing cancer. It's like wrong.
yeah.
Cannabinoids in their direct form put into an isolated cancer cell have been shown to kill it. Yes, and that gives us hope because cannabinoids are configured in such a way to where we think we can place a tracker molecule on them that was a, or a put them in a lysosome that will track to cancer cells, be absorbed, and kill them that way. But we're not there yet. So it's just one of those things to where people latch onto something for the buzzword and then completely miss what we have to do to make it work.
Hmm. Yeah, here's the B17.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew somebody that he ordered up. I don't know the pit from peaches or nectarines, and he'd eat
Yep.
them.
Same thing.
Yeah, and he was convinced. I'm like, well, where's does the studies? Oh, there's no studies, but it
Actually,
does
there
because
are
I read
studies.
it. Yeah.
There are studies for amygdalin and laetrile. They're very very old because we don't use it anymore, and it was discontinued because it was found to be horrifyingly toxic.
Huh.
Like the last study I can think of that I read about it, where it was used as it wasn't even used as a primary it was used as a secondary source. The majority of patients that had it in a therapeutic level, that had it in quote unquote a therapeutic level, showed signs of acute cyanide poisoning.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah. Also, I didn't know that Steve McQueen died of laetrile poisoning. That's interesting.
What was that on here?
Yeah, Stringer brought
Oh,
that up to
there's
us.
Stringer News 1. Laetrile killed Steve McQueen. All right, hold on a second. My spidey sense is saying I got to check that out. Here we go.
No, man, NA, don't do it.
Speaking of
That's
cancer,
like,
need to smoke.
surprisingly, that's something that's brought up to every doctor, every resident, everyone in medical school right now. If you can get a patient to talk to you about their smoking habit, it's a we recommend that you get them to talk about it and then ask them if they would like to quit.
Yeah?
Because if they would like, is it because it's one of those things where you can't tell somebody to quit smoking. They won't do it. You ask them if they want to quit. You give them the ability to quit, and you give them whatever help you can. And that works
Hmm.
for even if you're not a medical professional. You got
Yeah,
someone in your family. Go ahead. Sorry.
I ask a lot of people when they smoke if couple questions. How old were you when you started? And it's usually about 13.
Mm-hmm.
And have you tried to quit? And it's always yes, many times. And then if I say, well, if you could quit right now without a challenge, right, without having urges and desires and side effects, would you quit? And everyone just says yeah. So I want to quit. Maybe the 15th time is a charm. Yeah, it's tough. It's such a hard thing to shake.
Well, because it's not only an addiction, it's a form of it. The habit is in your muscles at this point. You've associated with some of your favorite things to do. Oh, I just
Yeah.
got done. I just got done eating. It was a good meal. I need to smoke to finish it off. Uh, it's a total lifestyle change. It's not just kicking a habit. That's it for an addiction.
Hmm. So here, mesothelioma is what McQueen had.
Well, asbestosis is an inflammation from asbestos that can lead to
Yeah.
mesothelioma, Thomas. Also, what am I telling you for? Aren't you a physician too?
I'm not a physician. I'm a computer programmer.
Oh no, I mean Thomas.
Oh, Thomas. Yes, Thomas Miller. Sorry. He is. Yeah, he said he was a 10-year practicing physician.
Well, I
And
hope I haven't screwed up too badly today because I'm a first year.
Yeah, Mind of God was, I don't know if he's still listening or not, but he was, he thought that Thomas Miller lived in his mom's basement and used a 56K modem. So,
What does that mean?
I don't know. Like, he's a medical doctor and he's whatever. Mind of God.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to find that. I never had a 56K myself.
Thomas, you want to come on and sit and help?
Oh yeah. Mind of God barked at the wrong dog. Oh, no man, I'm enjoying listening to you, he says. So apparently no complaints. Worth noting. So
well, that's good news. I always like to hear from the professionals.
Laetril. All right, so here is in July 1990, McQueen went to Mexico to use Dr. Kelly's regime. 50 daily vitamins and minerals, massages, prayer sessions, psychotherapy, coffee enemas, and injections of cell preparation made from sheep and cattle fetuses. Also given Laetril. From apricot pits. That's what it is, apricot.
Yeah. Well, you'll find it in most of the pits of those.
Yeah. But I guess if you're trying to get more of it, then you need to, you want to, wow. So, all right. Surf is saying he had a 14.4 modem. Just for a little, I don't know what. My first one was 1,200 baud. It was amazing. $200 for that modem. So
14.4 kilobit per second. That astounds me.
You could, yeah, it was over a phone line, so you had limited, but you could just about read it as text came across. Certainly 9600, if you were good at reading, you could. So Thomas Miller says he's actually at hospital, working in a small town. You still go to admit your own during the night.
All right.
At
Makes
hospital. Sense. Sounds like not American, the way he said that.
Oh no, he's probably just in a small town. He's probably actually on about 2 hours of sleep and been up. And let's see, what's the day? Tuesday.
Yep.
So he's probably on work hour 35.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking, like, how do you not make mistakes when you're that? What's been that?
A lot of it's just muscle memory and repetition. Like, you're most likely to make mistakes early in your career.
I suppose.
What's really fun is apparently it used to be worse, and Thomas can probably attest to this because it's only been recently that it changed. Yeah, we now have a cap on the number of hours that a resident can work. It's 100 hours a week.
Oh.
Used to be. It used to be uncapped.
It does not give any confidence. Oh.
But here's the thing: the cap is 100 hours a week now, but I can only work an average of 80 hours a week for the month. And seeing as how I hit my 80 hours a week early this month, last month. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Scott, what do you got going on there, man? Oh, you're an EMT. Yeah. Well, they got to keep you fresh enough to be able to lift someone. They just want us to point at somebody and go, "Nurse, do that."
Nice. Thomas Miller says he lives in Georgia, so all right. The at hospital threw me for a loop there because that sounds a little British how they say that. And they don't go to college; they go to university.
Yeah.
In England, they always say that. So I don't know. Maybe that's regional here, but we didn't go to university. We went to college out of high school. So
no, that's a good point. Never thought about that.
And they throw their garbage in the bin.
Oh God, the funniest thing ever that I had with somebody from Britain actually came from a mispronunciation of words. We had we had a gentleman who was from Britain on our floor, who was a CNA, and I guess we call him patient care techs now, but at the time he was a CNA. This is back when I was a CNA. That's how long ago
So
this was.
so what's a CNA?
It's a certified nursing assistant, or as
Okay.
they're colloquially referred to as clean and nasty ass. I said they got all sorts of names for each of us. CNAs are clean and nasty ass. RN means refreshments and narcotics, and MD means more drugs or misdiagnosis, depending upon how good he is.
Perfect. Perfect. So,
But yeah,
um,
we'll call him John. I'm sorry. I'll finish the story and you can
yeah.
get right back to it. But he was from Britain, and there was this new girl who had just come to the floor, and she had the freshest scrubs anyone had ever seen. Like, I don't know where she got them. They looked like they were designer. They were pressed. They were beautiful. Had no business being in a hospital where she was going to get feces on them. And she's like, "Hey, John, check out my pants." And he turned away immediately. That just scared to look at her. He was one of those very polite types. And he's like, "Oh, you can't be showing that around here." And everyone was very confused. And then she's like, "What's wrong?" It's like, "I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it." We come to find out later that pants in Britain is panties
Oh,
in American.
yes. Underwear. Pants
He
are
thought that he
underwear.
was, yeah. You could tell this girl wasn't wearing anything that wasn't a thong, and so he thought that he was getting a moon. He thought he was going to get a show of the moon face, and he was not trying to look at it.
He didn't want to get in trouble.
Exactly.
Oh, yep. And unfortunately, all the Brits are asleep right now. It's the middle of the night for them. None of them to defend. Um,
Really, we don't have casual on here pretending like he sleeps.
I don't know. I somebody I used to work with. She doesn't work there anymore. She had a work trip to England, and she wanted chocolate, and so she asked another lady that was there from England. I need to go. I want some chocolate. Can we go to Fanny Farmer? And
I
so
know where this is
if you
going.
know what Fanny means in England, so the lady was quite horrified to hear that the American wanted to go to that place, whatever that means. So, yep.
Oh God.
So, all right. One more question I had. So, vaccines are, and there's a lot of successes, and there's just no real solid link to the autism, getting the autism. Um, but there's some really good successes. For example, polio
Hmm.
is quite a horrible disease. I've known a couple people that had it as kids, and they have a limp or they're in a wheelchair. Um, but you don't hear about polio anymore. So, can you give a little bit? Do you know enough to give a little bit on that?
Actually, I can give you a little bit of that.
Yeah.
One of the major reasons why vaccine against polio was so effective was a couple of things. And it's not just, and a lot of people will say that it's because of these things that it's gone, but the vaccine still had a lot to do with it. When the polio vaccine came out, it was right around the time that we were modernizing sewage system and sewer treatment in America, especially for big cities where the biggest outbreaks would occur, because its transmission is actually fecal oral, which means that you
Mm.
get it from ingesting other people's feces, be it through contaminated water or it being on food, however you will, touching somebody, us you shaking the hand of somebody who didn't clean their hands appropriately,
Ooh.
doesn't matter. Yeah, and then touching your own face. So, I mean, I said when you add the fact that the vaccine came out, our sewer system greatly increased. Greatly increased, and its mode of transmission, it was almost a no-brainer that it would go down. But the fact that it went away has been a godsend. Like, that's more than most people could have possibly hoped for. Not to mention that the rate of being that its infectivity is relatively low.
So polio infectivity is low
Yeah, it takes actually a
versus
fairly if it takes a
like
fairly
measles
large
is
amount.
easier.
Yeah,
Right.
it takes lower it takes a lower viral load to become infected with measles, one. And two, because measles is spread via respiratory droplets, anytime someone's breathing around you if they have it, there's that risk. If you're unvaccinated, there's that risk.
So yeah, so it's a little harder to get polio. So the vaccine, that was a campaign, as I understand it, a worldwide campaign to get everybody vaccinated, basically.
And it worked.
Yeah. And here I have on screen a hospital room in the U.S. with patients in iron lungs in 1952. Oh,
Yeah.
how horrible. So
Especially for those who had especially for those who wound up with permanent damage.
yeah, so look at these, they're kids. Oh, this there's balloons. You can see they hung up balloons here by these, so they can have something.
Yeah. There's actually a documentary of, well, there's actually a little docu-piece I saw recently about the last man in an iron lung in the United States.
Yeah,
Is
was
it
it?
been in one since he was like 14 years old, I believe.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And what I think was it a power outage that eventually did it?
I'm not even sure that he's dead.
Oh,
I think the documentary was about building him a brand new iron lung because the one he was in was old and finding parts for it was difficult. So he had a specialized medical crew make him one as a part of an awareness campaign for the triumph of vaccines.
well, there you go. So here is
65 years he spent in that thing.
71-year-old polio survivor, one of the last people to still use an iron lung.
Oh, so he was six? That's impressive.
Wow. And it just uses vacuum, right, to have you breathe.
Yeah, it changes. It changes the diameter of your chest by creating a vacuum that pulls your lungs open by causing your chest to expand and contract.
So you're cutting in and out here a little bit here, like
Oh, sorry. I'll get
the
closer to
audio.
the micro fast.
Oh, that okay, good. So say that again about the vacuum.
The vacuum is what it's doing is it's attempting to pull your chest into an expanded state versus a contractive state so that it can breathe for you.
So do you have to time your speaking with the exhale?
I believe he does actually.
Oh wow.
It's been a while since I've seen the video.
Yeah. Oh, he's saying he spends half of every day inside of it.
Oh, well, never mind then. Still,
Yeah.
that's a large portion of his day.
So while the anti-polio vaccine eradicated the U.S. in '79, the disease is still rampant, epidemic in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria.
Yep. Now, one thing people do need to know about polio is the paralysis was a rare sequelae. It didn't occur terrifyingly often. It occurred often, but not in this extent every time. It's just that you could also get reinfected with it because it was easy for it to change configuration,
Oh,
and the recovery time was ridiculous.
long time
Yeah,
for recovery.
because
Wow.
yeah, you can look at a comparison in Guillain-Barré, which is a rare complication of the flu, where you have destruction of the myelin sheath on a nerve. It takes a long time for that myelin sheath to go back, and it's going to require lots of physical therapy. Now, imagine somebody who, instead of having the nerve sheath disappear and then rebuild, had a portion of that nerve die off. See, the thing about if it got to the body, if it got to the cell body in the center, where it goes where it goes into the spinal cord, it's never coming back.
Hmm.
But if it managed to not go that far, it would take them a long time and a lot of physical therapy to get the nerve back because peripheral nerves take a long time to actually regrow.
Like on the fingers.
Yeah, like
I, cr-
if you get a severing
I
of
crushed this finger last summer and it's still numb.
yeah,
Just the
and it may
tip.
never come back correctly. It may be numb forever. It may not regrow. But if it does regrow, it'll take years.
Hmm.
And it may not report correctly. You may be able to touch your finger, and for some reason, your brain reads that as the back of your hand should also tingle.
Oh, I haven't had that. That'd be weird.
Yeah, like nerves are very, very strange, and the body's not very good at at repairing them.
Huh. So, man, if it wasn't completely eradicated. So if people have polio, it must not be as bad as because it's not traveling much.
Well, you also have to remember that the modern world actually still gives polio vaccines.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, since
Okay,
2000, they've
is
been
it?
mandatory part of the schedule.
Okay, I didn't know that. Well,
Yeah,
that
it's
helps.
a yeah, it's because there was a reoccurrence in the third world, and now the third world can travel.
I see. Yeah. So there's one thing I did ask Dawn Treader, about vaccinations, and he's against them, especially the forced vaccinations. Um, but I asked, well, to be honest, I think he gave me a good honest answer. If there was something spreading, say smallpox or polio, um, and the vaccine, there was evidence showing that it was safe, would you get it? And he was a little hesitant, but in the end, he kind of is like, yeah, I think if maybe he was a little non-committal, but I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it seemed a bit of an affirmative answer to me.
Yeah, and
So
I said that's pretty typical for people who hold a conviction like that. Like I see, and I'll call his just a distrust conviction.
yeah,
But even some religious convictions are still flexible if it saves a life. Point in case Jehovah's Witnesses. If a
yeah,
blood transfusion is not necessary to save a life, you cannot give them one. You cannot give them one. They will sign off on it to make sure, but they
yeah,
will accept it if it's life saving. Most of them, I should say.
yeah, and that's maybe a little different than parents of the Christian Scientist who won't. Where you see every once in a while somebody whose kid died from not being treated.
Yeah.
So
Uh, One that's really bad is when kids get when kids get a meningococcal infection, which is preventable because we do have vaccines for it. That's how you wind up with a lot of child amputees, is from meningococcal infections.
what? How do you spell that?
It'd probably be easier if I sent it to you in a message because I suck at spelling out loud.
It's I'm searching for it. It's not coming up because I'm not spelling it well. So
But
some
meningococcal means that the linings of your brain have a bacterial infection and they can cause swelling.
like meningitis. Was that the root?
Yes, meningitis is the actual inflammation. A meningococcal infection just means that your meninges are inflamed by a bacterial, but have a bacterial infection.
Your meninges. Okay.
Yeah.
There. I
Yeah,
think
you
I
have three
found.
meninges. You have three meninges. You got Dermata, Pia mater, and the oh my goodness, and the arachnoid membrane. I'm forgetting the name of it all of a sudden. Please don't spite me, Thomas.
There it is.
Yeah,
Now this image has it. Arachnoid. There's spiders in our brains?
it's no, not at
No,
all.
that's freaky.
It's named that because it's got a bunch of small bridging vessels in it, and it kind of looks like a spider's web on examination.
Okay.
It's one of the few things anatomists get to do is they get to name things according to how they look, which is why the bone in your wrist that actually has a round cap on the end of it is called a radius.
The this bone?
It's on your
Radius and
thumb side.
ulna?
The radius
Radius.
is on
There.
your thumb side. Yeah,
Radius and ulna. Okay.
and the radius got its name for two reasons. One, it has a round head, and two, whenever you rotate your hand, if you put your finger on the outside of your hand, you realize, and then turn your hand, you realize that it's the thumb that rotates around the axis of the
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's
a two-part naming.
interesting. Okay, good. More information. So the who's Thomas Miller? Honestly, your fund of knowledge during a live pimp by MC attending is impressive.
Pimping is what happens in a hospital when the attending is like, all right, I'm going to make you feel stupid.
The attending physician, that'd be the boss of the resident.
Yeah, usually
Right.
rounds are going to be, if you're doing grand rounds, it's either going to be a high ranking member of the staff or it'll be the chief of medicine. And the first thing he'll do is he'll ask the questions to the clerks, the students. And if they don't get it right, he'll ask the residents. When they get it wrong, he'll ask the chief resident. If he gets it wrong, he will get a reprimand, and then he'll ask an attending.
Nice.
And if
So
no
I'm
one gets it
looking.
right, he says, "I hate you all."
I'm looking at the thumbs up, thumbs down. I got one thumbs down. Mind of God, seriously, you could just skip it. Gotta do that to me, man. So
Don't worry, he's punishing me, not you. That's my bad.
it's all right. So and so the final thing then is the forced, right? And so looking at like polio, um, I don't know how forced it was, if people could have a religious interest in not getting it back then, or if they just said take it anyway. But so what about forced immunizations in light of herd immunity and the risks that that people have, and in particular that gets me is if you have a bunch of people, right, the majority of the herd, as they call it, immunized, the only ones that would get it would be the non-immunized ones. So I guess it's on them. Is that true, or is that not really a good way of looking at it? Accurate.
It's largely true. The thing
Okay.
is that you do have some secondary failure, but secondary failure usually is a more mild disease. And if you actually had 100% coverage and there was no wild type that could be introduced, chances are it would go away on its own.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things to where that would require forced vaccination. And as much as I love the idea of having 100% herd immunity, I would never ask for forced vaccination. I
Yeah,
like
it's a
the
bit
idea of
far.
opt out. Yeah.
Opt
I like
out.
opt out. Yeah, I love opt out. Like it's actually it does wonders. Opting out is absolutely brilliant.
So
You
what
will
what's that
get them.
mean?
It means unless you say otherwise, it's going to be a part of everything you do, and it will be given to you as though it was supposed to be given to you.
Okay, so you get it by default.
Yeah, the default
Okay.
state is you will get it. You
Yeah.
can opt out of it with reason.
Wow, smallpox. That's the another on my list. I had not
Smallpox was
seen.
so smallpox was so dangerously it was so dangerous when it came to mortality. I don't think people took it. I think people took that vaccine willingly.
Oh, look
Like
at that.
it's not worth dying. Yeah. Oh, that's a terrible case.
That's 1973 in Bangladesh.
You can
I
so
gotta.
there's actually live cases of it currently somewhere in Africa too. I can't remember where.
Oh, this is saying last case in 1977.
There's been cases since then, mild
Really?
cases. Yeah,
Why is it always in Africa, people?
that's because well, it's a number of reasons.
I know.
Part,
Don't wanna go into that right now. I,
yeah,
I work with a guy from Tanzania, a great guy, and we joke about his country, but it's Tanzania is pretty decent compared to, I think, some of the other places.
yeah.
Huh? I'm not seeing anything.
Oh,
Monkeypox.
Oh, monkeypox. Oh boy. I say it's been a while since I looked
Yeah.
at that slideshow. I think monkeypox is universally fatal.
Really?
I think there's only been like 10 cases ever reported too.
Saying can be fatal in 1 to 10%,
Okay, I am
and
wrong. I accept
smallpox
that.
is 3 out of 10. So wow,
No,
don't want
I accept being
monkeypox or
wrong.
cowpox or any kind of pox.
Well, cowpox is relatively benign. Actually, giving us cowpox is what is where we got the idea to vaccinate. Is it to vaccinate against it with?
Yeah, the milkmaids got it and then didn't get smallpox.
Then when they did, it wasn't uniformly well. It wasn't nearly as fatal.
There you go. Interesting, interesting. So, well, yeah, the forced is that's a tough, and so I think that the as you said, the opt out makes sense, because then you get most people. So cool.
Yeah.
Anybody else in chat have any other questions? Because we're kind of wrapping up here a little bit, and Brian, if you have anything else that you wanted to add.
Just thanks for having me on. Honestly, I was worried that I was going to be incredibly boring and that you were going to boot me quick.
It's very interesting to me. I love it, and so I hope that people watching enjoyed it too. It's good information, I think, and I don't know. I tell you, I looked on Twitter to try to find some people that were anti-vaxxers, and I could only find fakes. I sent messages. I sent messages to several of them, and one of them, I said that their answer. I'm like, do you have any questions? Would you have any questions for a doctor? And it was just silly. Why would anybody take that? Which just sounds like silly. I said, oh, I'm just I kind of suspect you're a Poe, and then the person said, Poe, I love Kung Fu Panda. So there we go.
That's
Definitely
kind of
Poe.
self-confirming there.
Yeah. So I said thanks. Good to know. Keep up the good work. You're making them look silly. So, and no.
I'm internal med, Scott.
What's that?
Oh, Scott. So Scott DeLion asked what my specialty was. I'm internal med. I haven't subspecialized yet. I've still got a few years to figure out if I'm going to do that.
Internal med. There you go. So, all right. Somebody's into maps and things. My dad was stationed here and has some maps of a very plump India. Stationed in India in the imperial years. So cool. All right, well, that's all we got here. I think it was good. Thanks a lot for coming to you and having a good conversation about it. And next week, I'll return to the Flat Earth, and maybe find us some Flat Earther to talk to. If anybody wants to come on, they're getting harder to find to step out. They like the keyboard warrior. So
It's going to be interesting to find one upcoming, and it's going to be really interesting what their thoughts are on the new the new quote unquote model that got released today.
yeah, Nathan Oakley and Quantum Eraser had a fantastic new Flat Earth model. It's Google Maps. They're just saying hashtag same team. So it's the interesting thing. Maybe it's worth a video. If that's correct, then the distances must be correct. So then you just take those distances and map them out, and you'll get a globe. Sorry. Tiger Dan tried that. It didn't work. And then he quit Flat Earth. So, and they mocked him. So, all right. Well, that's it. And thanks a lot, everybody. We'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye, y'all.